So the thing is with relationship is that you always got to make sure you're dating the most beautiful girl, because if you're not, everything falls apart.
All right, guys, we are here. It is Chris and Derek. We've got the Love Systems live stream. We're here Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And today, this subject is relationships. We're going to be talking about the truth about relationships. We're going to be talking about things like, we had a whole bunch of questions. So a lot of guys are like, is it harder now to get into a relationship? How do you get into a relationship? Things like, how do you avoid a toxic relationship? I have a little list here.
Yeah.
That I'm going to pull up.
Here's the big thing, too. There's a lot of things about relationships that guys get wrong. And if you stick around to the end of the show, we're going to actually reveal a few things that I think almost every guy, when he gets into a relationship, gets completely wrong. And, and we're going to go over why that is and how to avoid that.
And we also have a guest today. We've got one of our instructors, Dan Wildcard, is going to be on the phone with us. He's going to be calling in live, and he's going to be taking some questions. Any of the questions you guys want to ask, because this is a live call-in show, so any questions you guys want to ask, we're going to send you guys a link to the Google Hangout where you can ask your questions via text or via voice to us, and we're going to be answering those questions live towards the end of the show. But right now, we're going to start just start by talking about relationships, and we're going to be getting Dan Wildcard on the phone in a second. But the questions we want to go over, I got my list here.
Also, if you are tuning in for the first time, we do these every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And like Chris said, I think it's on the chat, but you can call in. So there should be a link on there that you guys can go for the Google Hangouts to call in if you have a question. If this is your first time here, you don't know, that's how you do it.
So some of the things we wanted to go over. We had the question: are relationships obsolete? Do you need them? Especially if you're a guy with good game, do you need a relationship, or is it beneficial to you in any kind of way? Are relationships worth getting into? How do you get into a relationship if you want that? Are people having a harder time getting into relationships, and why? How do you meet the right person? I think that's a huge problem a lot of people have. It's really hard to meet the kind of person you really want to date. And then how do you avoid toxic relationships, and how do you maintain a good relationship? So those are a bunch of topics we're going to try and go over the next hour on LS Live.
You're really peppy today.
I am peppy.
Have you had a couple cups of coffee? Or
I'm just in a really good mood.
He's exceptionally peppy.
I'm exceptionally peppy.
That's good. One of the good things for today's episode is that both Chris and I are in long-term relationships. Chris has been in a relationship for how long? A couple of years now, at least. Right?
Yeah, like 2 years.
2 years.
You're in a relationship too,
I'm
right?
married. What was this? Is this?
Just holding off. I'm gonna.
I thought it was a call-in. That's probably just.
We got Dan on the line.
Dan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been in a relationship for. Well, I'm married, so I've been in a relationship for like 6 years, and then got married 2 years ago. And then also Dan, who's coming on the call with us, also a guy who's been in a relationship for over a year and a half, I think. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's like, real Mac daddies, they don't get in relationships. They Clooney it their whole life. And the truth is, no, that's not really how it works. We're going to get into the why that is and what the, how relationships can be beneficial. But just so you know, the guys that are giving advice today are all in relationships. So we're speaking from a place of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. So just have that in mind. I wouldn't take relationship advice from a guy that has been Clooney it his whole life. Yeah. He's not going to give good advice because he just doesn't know. He may understand women, no disrespect there. But understanding women from a dating perspective and understanding women from a relationship perspective is a very different set of skill sets. So just heads up about that.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. This is one thing, like science has proven it. People are getting married later in life now than they ever have in history. And it's moving back like dramatically. Like even since the year 2000, the average age of marriage has moved back like 2 or 3 years, which is like huge, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gone from like 30 for men to like 33.
Yeah.
And more people are spending more of their time single. And I really believe that people are having a much harder time having relationships now than they ever have in history.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's not good. It's harmful to people. It's harmful to society a little bit. And I think it also comes from this, like, we have forgotten how to have relationships as like a society. We have all these bad ideas and bad paradigms about relationships that are pushed on us by the media. And I want this show to be a little bit about breaking out of those paradigms or questioning those paradigms, because I think there's a lot of that.
I feel like we have a little bit of responsibility for this problem. I don't mean that in an egotistical sense.
You mean you and me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Specifically me and you. No. Guys that teach guys how to get better with girls. And the reason why is because it used to be, I mean, you look at our parents' generations, and of course our parents' generations, our grandparents, they're getting married and having kids by like 20. And that's old, especially for our grandparents' generation. But even our parents' generation, kids before they're 25 for sure. And if you're having kids over 25 in the 70s and 80s, it's a bit like, oh, you're starting kind of late. You know what I mean? If it's over 25. But nowadays, like you said, women are not having kids until they're like 30, 30 plus sometimes, and that's beginning to be the norm. And of course, regardless of the arguments for biological reasons of why you shouldn't do that, but also and what I'm getting at here is that I think maybe we had a bit of responsibility here, because as guys, it used to be that you meet the girl that you like, you meet the girl that does it for you, and you get her pregnant and you have a family.
Yep.
And that was something that was very rare as a guy. Like, you meet the girl that does it for you, and you go all in on that, and you start a family. But nowadays, and this is why I think things like Tinder and stuff exploded, it's like guys are like, wait a sec, I have options. I got some options here. I don't need to go all in on the first girl that's paying attention to me. And I'm not in small town, and maybe the rise of cities and stuff has something to do with this too. But I got some options here. So the necessity to do this has gone away. And if you teach guys how to do this so that they don't need to necessarily go all in on the first girl they meet, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah. No. I think definitely. I mean, the rise of game and the pickup culture, whatever, that we are involved in, I think is a bit of a symptom of that as much as it's a cause. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
Like if that wasn't the best strategy. I mean, because I know when I was in my 20s, women didn't want relationships. I mean, if you were really serious about a relationship in your mid 20s, a lot of women would be like,
that's a turnoff.
See you later.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, in retrospect, I realized there are things I probably could have done to not give off that bad vibe, let's say, or to not mess things up, and we're going to maybe talk about that soon. But it's not like it was driven by us. It was driven by forces that are much bigger than you or I. So we got Dan Wildcard here on the call. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey!
How's it going, Dan?
Let's turn him up.
Yeah. We're going to turn you up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think you guys can hear.
How's that?
Oh yeah, wow, that's good.
I think that's good. So Dan, what do you think? Are relationships obsolete?
No, not at all. I think that like you said earlier, that there's guys definitely have options, and girls definitely have options now. You don't have to, get married and have kids by 25, 27, but it's they're definitely not obsolete in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Okay, so why would a guy? I'm speaking rhetorically here because I'm in a relationship, so I know why. But why would a guy who has a lot of options with women? Why would you buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
Hey.
I mean, I know for me, I was the guy. I live in LA, and I was notoriously that guy. I was that dating three. If I was dating 3 women at a time, it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of low. Mm-hmm. And
I like that.
Gotta get my game back.
When you meet someone that you're like, it is a deeper connection. You're like, oh, this is more than just sex and having fun. It's, oh, this person actually gets me, and we can kind of go on these cool adventures together. We can kind of build something. It's a 1 + 1 = 3 type thing.
Absolutely.
Especially when you date someone that complements you in areas that maybe you're weak in. That's at least that's what I found. That's why I found this girl. I was like, oh wow, this is great. This is amazing. And it's just a new way of for me, it was kind of just a new way of, it was exploring something that I haven't really been in a relationship since 18 or something like that at that time. So, yeah.
That was something.
I totally agree with you, man. I think that for me, getting into a serious relationship was when I realized, it's not, if it's just about the sex, you're right. It's not, you You don't necessarily have to be in a relationship to get laid all the time. But you realize that when you're in a good relationship, you get so much more. Like I'm more successful. I eat healthier. I work out slightly more because I'm in a relationship, right? With the right, with a woman who with the right woman, right? There's some women out there that I've dated in the past that didn't bring much to the table, and then there are ones that do, and you realize that the ones that you do, those are the ones you keep.
Yeah, I think that I was just gonna say that I remember reading a lot of like classical literature where these authors are talking about like, I found this woman that completes me. She makes me so that I work harder, I write more, or whatever it was the author did at the time that I was reading. And I remember reading that and being like, man, that's interesting. That's a totally different perspective of what a woman should have in order to complete you than my traditional upbringing, or I guess more of a cultural upbringing, where it's like, no, women are there for, they're there to be your friends, they're there to be your equal, and it's a companionship and all that. And all that's true, but that was hitting on something I never really thought about so much. That's not really, I think, illustrated very much in culture, which is women, for the most part, in a relationship, should be able to make you a better man. Yeah. And that was always something that was sort of maybe hinted on, but not really explicitly described what that would mean. And it wasn't until I got in relationships, and in the relationship that I'm in now, obviously, where it's like, no, my life is so much better because of her. Like all the things that were making me worse as a person, not working as hard, abusing my body, not being as focused, and not being as conscientious about the things around me, the people around me, and things like that, that women are inherently better at, regardless of whether or not she's doing that for you. But just as from a purely perspective of men versus women, that was never something I really thought of so much. So to me, that was a big thing. I don't know if you have any comments on that. I just wanted to say that. I
agree. I'm curious if the nail on the head there.
So, but I think for me, so if we're going to talk, because we're talking about this is going to be a paradigm shift. I want to talk about paradigm shifts in relationship.
Do it.
I think the big paradigm shift is like, if it's just those snuggly, warm feelings and sex, and even friendship. Let's say she's my best friend.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get that. I've got plenty of great guy friends.
That's a great base. That's a great base. It's a base.
That's not enough.
No.
Right?
That's a great base.
It's what is great about a relationship is having somebody who just helps you with the stuff you're bad at, and you're helping her a whole bunch. You know what I mean? And that was one of the things that like kept me away from relationships for a long time, because women are high maintenance. I don't know.
Relationships in general are
it's just a little work.
You can't ignore there's a certain amount of maintenance that goes into a healthy relationship. Yeah. There's plenty of unhealthy relationships where there's no maintenance, and we all know how those end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I did the low maintenance relationships for a long time. They were fun.
There was I remember some advice my grandfather gave me when I was young, and he said listen, don't ever go for the hottest girl. The hottest girl, it doesn't matter. You're gonna, and he even told me, he's like, look, you're gonna do it. I already know you're gonna do it. But he's like, but here's the thing: when you get older and you're thinking about marriage, don't go for the hottest girl. Go for the girl who makes your life better, and that's it. Go for the girl that has an interest in making sure your life gets better, and the girl that has that interest is the girl that you should go for. And he's like, because looks will fade. You marry a girl when you're in your early 20s, let's say, which was the time he got married when he was just that age. By the time she hits her mid 30s, all those women you had options for in your mid 20s are going to look relatively the same, like 35, whatever. Maybe it's different in his time, but anyway. And the thing was, but he was right in that it all comes down to the woman that's going to make your life better and has an interest in making your life better is a good woman. And I think that's something I really took to heart when he told me that, and it's not something I really understood until I was in my late 20s. Yeah. And I think most guys don't get that.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys who they start to date attractive girls, and they find like this really hot girl that they dated, and they never dated a girl this hot, and then they suddenly they jump into a relationship with her, whether or not it's actually a good fit. And a lot of times, guys, if you're just looking to date or to get in a relationship for looks, you're actually looking for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying settle to the point where you're unhappy with how your partner looks, but at the same time, you should be looking for that level deeper connection.
I think that's a really good point. Maybe we should talk about that. How much do looks matter in a relationship? What do you guys think?
I mean, you gotta have a base level attraction.
Right. You need that level of sexual. You need to be very sexually attracted to your partner. Yeah. But beyond that, hotter, being no matter how hot you are, if you're a annoying, terrible person to live with, it's not going to work, right?
I think all our girlfriends and wives are watching, so we're all kind of like, "What are you talking about? I dated and married the hottest girl I ever met."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, me too.
But the truth is, and I agree with you guys, is that I think it has to do with guys that are watching this. I think, and it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Look, looks fade. They're going to fade. And you have to realize that. No matter what, she's the hottest girl you ever met. 15, 20 years, she's not going to be the hottest thing around anymore. And you got to understand that there needs to be something else going on there in order for that relationship to continue. And I think that guys overlook that, is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think if it's about looks, you don't have to get into a serious relationship with it. If you want somebody who's hot who just hangs around with you and sleeps with you, you can do that, without being in a serious relationship. But if you want to build a life with somebody, and this is the thing, it's about building deep down inside when it's at the end in a relationship, it's about building something. If you're going to build something with somebody, you want it to be somebody you can work with, and somebody who you get along with, and it can't be somebody who's hot but
has all these issues.
Nuts. Yeah.
Or I'll say another thing, just because it's something you brought up. I'll even say sexual chemistry is probably more important than the actual looks. That's what this good sexual chemistry will fix so many issues in a relationship going forward. Because obviously when you first start dating, it's just you're hooking up, you're having sex all the time, but a good sexual chemistry and good sexual communication keeps that part of the relationship going so much longer that it can relieve tension in a lot of other areas of your relationship.
Absolutely. And just so we're clear, when we're talking about looks from one end to the other, because our low end is a 9 and our high end is a 10.5. Okay, that's 12, the rate. Yeah. That's where we're dealing with. Okay, this end of the spectrum. All right. So that was great. Now, do you guys think that relationships are harder to get into these days than it was before?
I think you get things the whole reason Tinder I think exploded was because this need or this want for more of a casual kind of relationship that a lot of these dating sites weren't really they weren't necessarily giving people the means to
yeah, you want to have sex and all you really want to know is what they look like.
Yeah.
And 2 sentences about them.
People are so focused on themselves nowadays, and with the millennials, it's all about you. I think it's more has to do with this new culture of I just want this. I want the sex. I want the feel goodness of the relationship, but I don't want the relationship because the relationship's going to tie me down. Especially for women, I would assume. And God bless feminism and everything is women nowadays can have all these just as much opportunity as men, but at the same time, I think there's still a cultural sort of what is it, when there's kids involved, it still goes on the woman to make sure those kids are okay, and she's going to be the stay-at-home mom more so than the men. So I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. The women see that as I don't want to get involved with that because I'm focused on my career, and I feel like if I have kids, I got a need to be able to stay home because the guy's not necessarily going to be able to do that. I don't know. Maybe something that is a thought going through their heads. But at the same time, I think most people nowadays just want to have sex. And it's more open.
That's what it's about. Yeah. I mean, if you see relationships about getting sex on a regular basis, and comfort, then why not just use Tinder and not deal with the concept, not deal with all the bullshit. Oh yeah, everything's going good. I enjoy this person. I get good feelings. Now the relationship's getting hard. Let's just see you later. Let's go back onto Tinder. I mean, I think there's a tendency to do that, and you can blame Tinder or whatever, but it's people making the choice to do this, and they're taking the perspective of doing this. And I would just say that, and this is the thing: if you don't realize the benefit of a good relationship, then that makes sense, right? If you don't know what a good relationship is like, then why not tell the woman you're dating to get lost as soon as some obstacle comes up in your relationship, and find some new chick on Tinder. But that ultimately is not a good life, right? Ultimately, you're not building the thing, and this is the thing that you realize, a lot of guys realize maybe when they're 30 or something like that. It's like, you know what, I've been going out, I've been having a lot of fun, everything's been super duper fun, but I'm not building anything, right? And okay, scientific studies have shown that single men spend more money on dumb stuff. They spend more money on cars and clothes and alcohol and all kinds of frivolous expenses. And men who are in serious relationships invest more, right? They buy houses and condos. And so the guys who are in relationships and are not spending all their money trying to get laid, right? These are the guys who wind up in a better state financially at the end of the day.
I hadn't even heard that statistic, and I'm just thinking about being in a relationship for the last year and a half, and I'm like, oh wow, I have put a lot more into my savings and investments in the last year. So
men who are married live longer.
Yeah.
By a significant amount. Women don't.
I don't drink as much. I don't spend as much money. I don't. There's so many things that being.
You're not out till 4 in the morning.
I'm not out till 4 in the morning. I have a schedule.
As often.
I can exercise regularly. I'm not hungover all the time. I mean, it's great. But I mean, this actually comes to do with has something to do with one of the questions I want to ask, which was, is it worth getting into a relationship with someone that you don't necessarily see as maybe your future wife or your future even long-term girlfriend, but simply she's attractive, she's hitting enough check marks on that list? Is it worth getting into a relationship just to get some experience with getting in relationships?
So that question, is it worth getting a relationship just to get some experience?
Yeah.
And then after that, we're going to talk about how do you get into a relationship, because I think that's one question a lot of people ask.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to some questions, because we're getting a crazy amount of questions and comments coming up on the comment board, so we're going to get to that later. But should you get into a relationship just for the experience?
Yeah.
What do you think, Dan?
What do you think, Dan?
I mean, I think that's, we're potentially splitting hairs here, but I think I wouldn't advise against it. I think if you're really interested in dating, if you're really interested in that person, and you're not like, oh, she's the one right away, but you're like, let's see where this goes. I think that's, a potential for a relationship, but you also need to be cognizant of, 2-3 years down the line, if you're still dating that person and you don't think it's a long-term thing.
Okay, I'm glad you said this, because I have 2 reasons why I think this is a good idea. And one relates to what you just said, in the sense that sometimes you may see a woman that's kind of like, well, she's hitting a couple check marks on her list, but not all of them. But then you decide, you know what, I'm just going to keep going forward with this, and this will lead into our next thing about how to start a relationship. But you end up starting a relationship with her, and then you realize through the process of that she actually is a lot more in tune with what you're looking for than you initially thought. Mm-hmm. And you end up having a relationship with her that you may have saw before as something that was just, oh, I'm just going to do this because she's okay. But now it's like, wow, she's actually a lot more closer to what I'm looking for than I thought. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that I think, and I still believe this, you learn more about women by being in relationships with them than just by dating them. And
100%.
Yeah, and I don't think you should get into a relationship because of that. Like, I just want to learn about women so I can use my knowledge from this one to get better with the next one. I think that's a really negative way of looking at it. But if you do happen to give women the benefit of the doubt and understand that, you know what, she's hitting enough of my check marks that I'm willing to go forward, and then you find out you have a relationship with her and it maybe doesn't work out, I still think you learn more going through that, and going forward to meeting the real woman that you want to end up with is going to be a lot easier because of that experience. So don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not saying get into a relationship just to manipulate and learn so you can get better with the next one. What I'm saying is give women the benefit of the doubt, and that's going to help you even if that one doesn't work out for the next one.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys who get good at, and I'm using air quotes here, like game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get good at dating. They go from a place of absolute scarcity to a place of maybe being too picky.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that with a lot of my longer term students, where we'll talk about stuff, and they'll be like, oh, I didn't want to start a relationship with this girl because of X, Y, and Z, and then this girl because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, these are really small issues that may not be an issue in 3 or 4 months.
And absolutely. And I mean, I know because I was there at one point. If you're a guy, a lot of guys have anxiety around relationships, around getting even like slightly serious with a woman, that really holds them back. And usually it's these guys who like, I say they're guys who like every time they kiss a girl, they wind up in a relationship with them for a year. Like they've gone through high school and like university. Every girl that they kissed, they wound up dating for a year, and sometimes it was good and sometimes it was bad. So they get really nervous and shy about starting something, like even making a move or even giving a call to a woman that they're interested in, because they're like, they think that they're gonna get tied into a 1-year relationship. So they're like, oh, she's, I like her, but I'm not going to call her because I don't want to date her for a year. And you shouldn't think like that. You should call her if you want to go on the next date. You should move forward if you want what is the next step in your interaction. Mm-hmm. Not make everything bigger and more complicated than it really is by presuming that if you make out with her, if you go on a date with her, or if you sleep with her, that's going to necessarily lead to a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. You can have these casual relationships, right? And this is the thing. It's like, should you have a really serious relationship with a woman just to test it out? No, I don't agree with that. Can you sleep with a woman and have a casual relationship with her, despite the fact that you think probably it's not going to turn into anything super serious? Sure, that's what I think most people. That's what most relationships people have in their 20s are like.
This is how we should transition, because I think this is a great point you're bringing up, which is how do you start a relationship? And I think this the way you just answered that answers a lot of the guys' questions. Well, how do I start a relationship? Is it about just saying, "Hey, we're in a relationship"? How do you go about that? So that's a question I would like to ask.
All right, I have an answer for that, but I'm gonna give my answer last.
Okay.
Dan,
do you have an answer for that?
How
do you start a relationship?
So my personal preference is the way every one of my relationships has started. I've been dating a few people, find this girl, I'm like, whoa, there's something more serious here. And, as we start communicating, as we start talking about what we want, right, the other girls will start to fall off. And it's like what you were saying, Chris, it's the next step, the next step, the next step. It's not, oh, I don't date this girl for 2 months and then all of a sudden I'm picturing myself marrying her 4 years out. I'm picturing, okay, let's see where this is going. Month 1, month 2, okay, I'm getting more serious now. I really don't want to invest time in these other girls that I'm dating. I want to spend more time with my partner, and kind of just let those fall off or actually end them. Once you have the conversation of, hey, do you want to make this a serious thing? You'll know when the right time for that conversation is. But it's it's not week 1, 2. It's a month or 2 or 3 or 4 in.
And it's after you've set the emotional groundwork for it. Like, she knows that conversation has already been had between you in an emotional way before it comes out logically.
I'll say this, and I know you want to go last anyways, and this might lead into what you're going to say, which is I've always said, let the experience dictate the label as opposed to the label dictate the experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So always make sure that the experiences you're having with her should dictate what it is.
Repeat that.
Yeah.
Repeat
Let the
thing, 'cause
experience dictate the label, not the label dictate the experience. So you don't say, let's get into a serious relationship
Yes.
when the experiences are not up to that level yet.
Yeah.
That's the wrong way. This should be one of these
You're
big mind
I'm annoyed
fucks.
with you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't like.
This is the problem most guys make, is they say, hey, let's have a serious relationship. But the experiences aren't up to par yet. So the girl's like, whoa, what are you talking about? So you always have to make sure that the experiences are passing that level before the label gets there. And women do the same thing, by the way. Women will be like, where are we at? What's going on here? We've been on 3 dates. What's going on? So you got to make sure that you dictate to them, or express that to them. Say, look, I love what's going on with us. I love this stuff that's happening. I really like you, but I don't see the necessity to put a label on it yet. And I think in a woman's they want to put labels on things, especially when they're getting a bit older. They want a relationship. But just make sure you keep that in mind. Let the experiences dictate the label, not the label dictate the experience.
I would say I would just adjust what you said and make the emotion dictate the label.
That's even going deeper. Yeah, you're right. But I think that the experiences come from the emotion. Mm-hmm. So this is the problem. Because some guys, they'll start dating a girl and they're like, oh my God, I'm in love with her. And they just don't know what love is. And they think, oh, my emotion is there, therefore let's go for it. So I still think the experiences, and it's a mutual experience, not just your own experience, but the mutual experience. So if you may think, oh, I had experience, I went on a date with her and I love her and I feel like it was mutual, even though it probably wasn't, you can't use that as a basis to start a serious relationship when it might not be mutual, right? So yes, I hear what you're saying, and in every true experience that a guy that knows what he's doing, that will be the case, but the guys that are a little bit ignorant of that may not get that.
If you can't read the emotions that well,
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of follow from your perspective of
I
saying that
you
got to create the emotional connection, and when you're trying to start that relationship, you have to create that strong emotional bond between you and her. You have to take her through the experiences too. Like there's some sort of progression that works naturally for entering a relationship, right? So like. There are steps you have to take. There's steps you have to take. So, if you want to be in a serious relationship, you have to introduce her to your friends.
Yes.
That happens before. Like that's an important step, right?
Yeah.
You have to maybe you introduce her to your family a little bit.
That's one of the steps, definitely.
Yeah, you gotta and that's when it starts getting serious. I think that's when that's when things start definitely getting serious, and so the label that you're giving yourself, you want her to be your girlfriend. Let's say if you have a woman that you're seeing, you met her on Tinder or something like that, and you want to make her your girlfriend. How do you go about it? Well, first of all, you make things awesome, right? You have a really good time together. Then you introduce her to your friends. You make her like your friends. Mm-hmm. You meet her friends. You make them like you. Then
social circles kind of coalesce there.
So the social circles can kind of coalesce. You're starting to get into a situation where if you broke up, it would be a pain in the butt, right? And that's when you start saying, all right, I want you to be my girlfriend, or you start putting labels on things.
Yeah, exactly.
And other steps are meeting the family. That's probably when it goes again another level up. Meeting, going on a trip together is a really big one.
Yeah.
Going on a trip together is a really, really key relationship milestone, because that's when you realize whether you can actually get along
and you live
outside of whatever context you've always been dating in.
And this is the big thing. I remember you told me this, actually, which was, if you ever want to know if you can live with a girl, go on a trip with her. Because that's going to give you a little mini experience of what it's going to be like living with her. And it's 100% true.
Yeah.
My big go-to has been camping. If I can go on a camping trip with a girl.
Camping trip.
I'm always camping.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big outdoors guy. So it's like,
cool.
If I go on a camping trip with a girl and it doesn't turn into a complete shitstorm, I'm like, great. This is the girl for me.
Do you like give her challenges? You're like, all right, you start a fire. I'm gonna go set the tent up.
No, it's like Survivor. She's got like 30 minutes to start a fire and turn the rope down.
and like raise the flag.
Yeah.
Or it's
You
Okay,
can't
so
start a
let's-
fire. You're fucked. Like, you
let's
can't do it.
let's do a digression here. What are the tests you give to women before what test does a woman have to pass before she becomes your girlfriend?
It's kind of subjective, I think, isn't it?
There's the camping one.
What
Have
else?
you ever had a woman really badly fail?
Not yet. I wanna see that.
I have a camping story.
He's in the West Coast. They
Okay.
are more camping minded people.
I have a camping story. So I took a girl camping, an ex of mine, and it was a really easy camping. It was one of those places where you pull up with your car and you just build a tent next to your car. But we made a fire, and she was like, "Whoa, this is amazing." She'd never been camping before.
Wow.
But like it was, you know those giant June bugs?
Yes.
Like really gigantic beetles. I don't know if you get them on the West Coast.
They might not get them
divisions.
even in the U.S.
Big,
Maybe Canada.
big beetles that come out in June, and they fly. They love salt and water, and so they will just fly out of the dark and just jump on your forehead.
They hit you in the face all the time when you're out at night.
Yeah, and so a June bug flew into the fire,
Exploded?
lit on fire,
Okay.
and then started flying at my girlfriend's face.
Mm-hmm.
And she just screamed and would basically not go outside after that.
You know what's funny? Katie, my wife now,
And I laughed at her.
we were at my cottage, and all women are scared of June bugs. This is like a thing. All women are scared of June bugs.
We get
But a
them on
June
the West
bug-
Coast, by the way.
Oh, do you? Okay, good to know. So a June bug flew, my grandpa was there too, and a June bug flew by, and the women are screaming, and Katie grabbed it and crushed it in her hand, and was like, "Fuck June bugs," and threw it on the ground, and I was like, I'm marrying this chick.
That's when you know.
I'm
That's when you know.
Yeah. She did not give a shit about June bugs.
There you go. Those are the kinds of things that are important.
Yeah.
Seriously. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of June bugs in life.
Yeah.
And if your partner spends her life cowering, I feel bad talking about this girl because she was a great girl, but if she spends her lifetime cowering from these things, that's not as good for you as the one who crushes them.
Yeah.
So good for her.
Screw it. Yeah.
All right,
good.
so we got some extra questions
Yeah, a
here.
lot of
Let's do a question. We've got people. It's a call-in show, so we've got people who are asking us questions on the YouTube chat. So we've got a guy called Nobody's Perfect, and he says, "How many dates do you think most people go on before becoming exclusive or becoming official?" And he goes on to say, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm one of either the many guys or few guys out there in the world that hates or resents why we guys always have to be the initiators in terms of starting the relationship." So first of all, you should not hate or resent the fact that men have to be the initiators in relationships. And the reason why is because you have to accept the world the way it is. And if you get mad at the way the world is, you're going to be mad for your entire life.
Yep, because the world is the way it is.
The world is the way it is. And
Not fair.
men are the initiators in relationships. This is something that you're lucky because you know this now, okay? Men are the initiators in relationships, and I'll tell you what, women basically will not initiate any of this stuff because women desire to be desired. And when you desire to be desired, that gets ruined when you have to make a move on the guy. You don't chase when that's when you want to be desired.
I'm curious about Dan's thoughts.
But now that you know that you have to take the initiative. So taking the initiative has an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is you get choice. You can choose to take the initiative on any woman you please. When you go to a bar, you can choose which woman you talk to. Whereas when a woman goes to a bar, she doesn't have to do any work, but she also can't choose which guy talks to her. All right? So guys who take the initiative and who take responsibility get the choice. That's the advantage, and that's worth it. It's good.
That's a good point. It is worth it, definitely.
So the other question was, how many dates do you think most people go on before becoming exclusive?
Dan, you wanna tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a set number at all. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo on my end. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
So there's no set number.
There we go.
Yeah, there's no set number, but at least for me, like, you know, the way you'd figure. So if you're asking, oh, is there a set number? You're kind of asking the wrong thing. You're like, oh, well, if I've been on exactly 6 dates with this girl, we should be completely exclusive now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe those dates didn't go as well as some other dates you've been on. Maybe, the connection's not as strong in the beginning, and it kind of takes a little time to build up steam later. And I'm not saying 6 dates is the number. I'm just using that as an example of what someone would say that's the number for. My point and the way I view it is get really good at dating and get really good at dating in non-committed relationships, and you will know it's the right time when you're like, oh crap, I'd really rather hang out with this girl that I'm interested in over the other 2 or 3 that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this relates back to the comment I said earlier, which is like let the experience dictate the label. And it kind of goes along with what Chris said too, which is emotion is a big part of that. So a lot of guys may think, oh, experience, that means 6 dates, we're in a relationship. When I say experience, I don't mean the logic of the experience. I mean the actual emotional experience as well, which is what Chris was getting at. And that's the idea, is that not only, it may be you've been on 6 dates, it may be you've been on 1 date, but that emotion and that connection is there. That can start a relationship. I've been in situations where I've been on 1 date with a girl, and that turned into a relationship. Not something that I was like, hey, let's get in a relationship, but I just knew after that 1 date that that's where it was going to go.
I actually got in a relationship once where I was dating a girl who was I met her summer after her junior year.
Mm-hmm.
So we went on a bunch of dates that summer. She had to go back for her senior year, and then we picked it up from there, and it was like a couple dates, and then we were exclusive after that. So that one's even weirder because it's like dated a bunch, had that casual relationship, kept the contact going, obviously was dating around in that 10 months she's gone or something like that, and then picked it up from there. Which is, if there was a set number of dates to go on, that relationship completely broke every single rule.
Yeah. Ooh, that was loud.
Yeah, I had. My girlfriend, she was living in a different city when we first started dating, and so I actually met her, and then left town the next day. So nothing ever happened the first night. Stayed in touch over Skype, and then our first date, I took the train to Toronto and stayed with her for 3 days. So like that just gives you an example of how the rules don't necessarily have to apply. First date was 3 months after we had met. Mm-hmm. We'd spoken a ton of times, but it was 3 days long. Basically.
Yeah, and this is why people always talk about like, oh, love can conquer all, love will move mountains, and all this sort of thing. And they're absolutely right. But it doesn't mean that you should use that as a basis for how to go about starting a relationship. That should be the that shouldn't be the norm. That should be the what's the phrase we're thinking of? The not the norm. It's the anyway.
Exception.
The exception. That's the word we're thinking of. The exception, not the norm. So when you have these things that happen that are making you feel like, man, I really feel like this is the girl I'm going to be with. That's great. Those will happen. But don't just automatically assume all those things that might give you that feeling are necessarily examples of why you should start a relationship. This is really hard to actually articulate unless you've been in a lot of relationships, so you can understand the difference, which is why I said earlier, you learn a lot more about women by being in a relationship than not being in a relationship. Those things, if you've never had a girl fall for you, if you've never had a girl do things for you, it can seem like when a girl does do those things, you're like, oh my God, this is the one for me. But it may not be the case. It may just be this girl is desperate and knows how to get a guy to like her, and she's doing those things. Or it may be more of a mutual thing in which she really is caring about you, and that's a mutual sort of love of each other. But you need to know the difference, because sometimes it can be confusing, is all.
I think going along, that goes perfectly with your let the emotion dictate the experience. You need to become emotionally intelligent enough to know these things and not rely on fixed numbers. 6 dates, 8,
exactly.
4 days.
Yeah.
You need to be able to understand your own emotions and understand her emotions too.
Yeah. Sometimes an experience that may take 6 dates with one girl may only take 1 date with another woman. And you got to understand the difference there.
So do we all agree it's 4 dates?
It's 4 dates, definitely.
4.5.
4.5. Oh, sorry. 4.5. Halfway through the 5th date is when it really...
Yeah.
That's when it really
That's when you really got to be exclusive.
Yeah.
So if there's another guy there, you have to tell him to leave.
Yeah.
Halfway through.
Mm-hmm. Don't do that.
All right. So we got. How do you meet the right person? How do you find the right person? What is the right person like? We kind of talked about that with the whole somebody who makes your life better kind of thing. Is there anything more we would elaborate?
I'll add to that. Like in my boot camps, and pretty much every boot camp makes a guy do this, to list out things you want in a girl, right?
Yeah.
And I remember looking back, because it was right when I got into my current relationship. I was compiling notes for a student in like a boot camp, just getting stuff ready to prepare. And I remember going through my own list. I was like, oh wow, my girlfriend checks all these boxes. So I think one thing is like actually writing a list down and like knowing what the hell you want. Like take some time and sit down. And on a boot camp, we'll help. Like that's a huge part of mine, is like sitting down and figuring out what the hell do you want in your life. What the hell do you want out of your girlfriend?
We do it too, and tell me if this is the same for you, Dan. Is that we say, describe your perfect woman in non-physical terms, and non-physical is the big thing there, because most guys, when they think of their dream girl, they think in physical terms, and so I think that the non-physical aspect is what's really describing your dream girl.
Yeah, mine is non-physical. I left that out. Like non-physical is like, it's amazing how clear that makes that, and it's also amazing how, if I have a couple guys in boot camp, there's half of them that may not know that from a non-physical standpoint.
Yeah, some guys have trouble answering it. They're like, I can't think of it. I don't know what to say.
She's
And
hot.
a lot of times that just laying that out can be some of the thing, like that helps. That can help so much, That's actually a good point of like how I teach a lot just off that kind of list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just visualize what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then taking them through the process of knowing what to look for, and then taking them through the process of knowing like, so okay, now you know what you're looking for. How do you get it? How do you structure everything to get it? I mean, that's a really, really important skill that when we're teaching that stuff, guys love that stuff.
Yeah,
guys really, really benefit from it. Now, okay, here's a question: how do you avoid toxic relationships? How do you identify that? Because I'll tell you, basically 2/3 of the guys who take my classes say they come at some point. If I dig down, they come to a story where they were in a really, really terrible relationship that like destroyed their self-esteem, and that's kind of what led them down this path.
All right, I'm going to talk about this last. I'm going to go pee really quick. You guys got to talk about this.
All right, just taking off from the live stream.
I can't hold it. Oh, there we go. We're good.
All right,
Chris, I'll let you lead with this one, because I think you and I are going to think in the same way, but I think you do a better job of explaining it than I do.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the difference between a like, if you're in a relationship, you have to learn how to deal with a woman's flaws. Anybody you're in a relationship with is going to have some flaws. The question is, are those flaws just flaws that you can deal with, or is it somebody who's dragging you down? Right? Is it somebody who is actually pulling down the people around them? Because that's the kind of thing that you have to avoid. That's when it becomes a problem, right?
I think going off that, I go with super, super negative people.
Yeah.
Generally are not great partners, right? People that drag people down. And a girl that doesn't respect, and this, I don't mean this to come off harsh. If I have certain boundaries, right?
Absolutely,
if those boundaries aren't respected, that can lead to a toxic relationship.
Absolutely, and that's the big issue is, do you respect other people's boundaries?
Yeah.
So, I understand if you want to hang out with me on a Wednesday night, and I understand if you're a little bit upset that I wasn't able to make time for you on a Wednesday night. Fine. But if you are mad that I couldn't make time for you on a Wednesday night, and there's no other really good reason for you to be upset about that, like it was somebody who just died or something like that, if you're mad, that means that is not respecting my boundaries. That's saying my my entertainment on a Wednesday night is more important than your self autonomy, right? And that is pathological. And that's why you need to, like, in a relationship, you need to set your boundaries very firmly. And the boundary is just like, I do my thing, you do your thing, we do things together, but I don't tell you what to do, and you don't tell me what to do. Certainly not in a way that's inappropriate, right? Yeah. Certainly not beyond, like, a tiny little bit. And some people can't handle that. Some people feel like they need to tell you what to do. Like, if you don't call them back when they want you to call them back, you've hurt their feelings terribly, and you're an awful person. You've harmed them. You've hurt them.
It's like a deal killer.
That's insane. That's like, it literally is insane. You can't deal with people who get injured by the absence of a phone call. You're like, that relationship can go nowhere. So if you experience that, so if you set your boundaries, you go, hey, sorry, I'll call you when I have time to call you. If they can't handle that you're an independent person, that relationship needs to end sooner rather than later.
Mm.
Yeah.
And because it's the really pathological people who can't tolerate other people's self-autonomy. And that's the essence of a toxic relationship. And there's three different kinds of toxic. There's three different, like, really common types of toxic people that you can date, because men are like this too. But that I talk about. But the thing that unites them all is that they don't respect other people. And they don't respect the fact that other people make their own decisions and live their own lives. They want everybody to be all about them all the time. That is, if you get a whiff of that, you gotta get out of there real quick.
Yeah.
You got to run a lot from those relationships.
Yeah.
And the other thing is liars. People who, like, lie a little bit, they also lie a lot, and they also will lie about you. And so you need to, if you're dealing with somebody who seems to lie a whole bunch, then again, run, don't walk, because they'll just make stuff up about you.
Yeah, it's tough too, especially when you get in situations where they're doing things called gaslighting, which is essentially when they make you feel like you're the person that's crazy when you're bringing up issues and situations of the relationship, and even, like, really basic things, like Chris said, like, like not calling when maybe you said you were going to call, and they make it seem like you're the worst thing ever for doing that, and that they're the normal one and you're the weird one, and really putting you in a position where you're supposed to. It's manipulation. But the way that I always looked at it is, like, if you look at two people, right? You're going through their lives. A relationship should be a situation in which it's like, oh, you want to start a relationship? Yeah. There's that one connection, and then maybe you learn more about each other and you get closer. And even though you're still going forward, there kind of is a thing where you get connected and you go forward together. And a bad relationship is one where you're going forward and the person is like, oh, we're in a relationship, and they go poof, like this. and you're going forward and they're just, like, holding you back, dragging you down, making you veer off into unnecessary places.
Finally, I can stop taking care of myself.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the worst relationships. So if you ever feel like that, like you're in a relationship where they're holding you back, they're stopping you from doing things. They don't want you to hang out with your friends because it takes away from time from them. Mm-hmm. They don't want you to go and put extra hours at work to get that promotion because it's taking away time from them, the time they get to spend with you. That's a bad relationship. It should always be a mutual movement forward, not something where the person takes you and fucking adds weight and drags you down. And that's the simplest way I can explain it. Yeah.
But if you find your partner doing that, you can talk to them about it.
Some people
be like, no.
Yeah.
Don't ditch your other stuff because you want to spend more time with me, because it's going
to
be bad on a relationship. But if they don't, if they don't do that,
if they don't
listen to the reason.
Yeah, if they don't respect the fact that you want that. That's the. And here's the thing: I've met a lot of women, and I think in general, women tend to prefer relationships with guys that they like, obviously, and they're going to try to make that relationship happen. And sometimes that takes the form of them wanting to spend more time with you. So don't initially think that because she wants to spend more time with you, that's like, oh my God, she's dragging me down. Because that's not the case necessarily. It just means that you need to really communicate what those boundaries are, what that sort of integration looks like. And if she wants to hang out with you 3 nights a week, and you got to say, look, I got a lot on my plate right now. I got work. I got my friends. I can really only see you 2 nights a week. I just want to let you know that. If she respects that, that's great. If she doesn't, then there's an issue, and that's where the problem is.
Now, Sarah, we've got Sarah, the admin. She's talking to the people in the Google Hangouts who are asking us questions. Sarah, are you there? Does your microphone work? Do we have any questions coming in?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Hey. No, we don't have any questions on the Google Hangouts, but we have lots on the YouTube page.
Okay.
Let's jump into those then.
Sarah, can you read some of the questions for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right.
Ken Cummings wants to know, what are good strategies for managing relationship expectations in the first few months? Conversation starters, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that
Good
if
one.
you're in a relationship and whatever the expectations are, you need to be completely honest with the woman of what you're wanting, right? And a lot of guys make this mistake where they think, oh, if I tell her I'm not interested in a serious relationship, she's gonna run for the hills, and that's not really
Usually
the
not
case.
the case.
Not the case at all. So
Women kind of expect, if they think that you are good with women and they think that you're a really attractive guy, I think they kind of expect you to be a little bit indifferent to relationships.
yeah, a little bit.
They expect to have to work.
Not like to push against them necessarily in the sense that you want to say I don't do relationships, but certainly in like the we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. This is the thing that we should really express. You never want to say like relationships are not an option. I mean, if they aren't an option, then you should certainly say that. But if you're at least open to relationships, you should not say that. So if the girl that has a relationship with you, usually what I tell guys is they'll say, look, really focus on the experience and the emotion, right? So you want to say things like, look, we just started seeing each other. I love spending time with you. I think that what we have is amazing. I really want to see where it goes. I don't really want to put a label on it right now because I just got out of a relationship or whatever the reason would be. Maybe it's because it's not enough time. You just got out of a relationship, whatever. But you always leave it open. So you don't want to say like, sorry, I don't do relationships. Because then she's going to be like, well, fuck you then. I'm not doing a relationship either. But what you want to do is let them know that because sometimes what they're asking is not, do you want to be in a relationship with me? What they're asking is, do you feel the same way that I do about what's going on? And you can answer in the affirmative to that without creating a relationship. And that's the real thing going on there that I think a lot of guys don't understand. Is they think that the only way I'm going to convince her that I'm really into her is by being in a relationship with her. That's not really the case. And Chris talked about this forever about what women actually want. And what women actually want is not necessarily a relationship. What they want is the byproduct of a relationship, the desire and the trust and the attraction, but they don't necessarily need that label as long as they have those other aspects to it.
We got a good question here. We got Lewis. He asks, what would be nowadays the reason for having a relationship? Data shows that divorce is continually increasing. So why should you, let's say, try to get into a serious relationship or think about getting married when divorce is increasing?
I mean, why buy a car when most cars break down?
Yeah. Or obesity is increasing as well.
Mm.
But if you don't eat fucking garbage, you don't get obese.
Yeah. I mean,
so the fact that it's not that relationships are not working out for other people doesn't mean that it has to not work out for you. That's my argument to that.
That's a better analogy too, because it's like oh, am I not supposed to eat? Because
it's not like you don't have control over obesity.
Yeah.
You know, work out, eat right. Nobody has to get obese.
The reason that relationships are more likely getting in divorce is because people don't know what they want. People have more options.
People don't know what they want. They come into a relationship with stupid attitudes and they're disappointed. They expect people to solve their problems for them, or they expect relationships to be something that they're not.
I think one thing that people don't realize nowadays that maybe was, I don't know if it was expressed more in older generations or just because they didn't have as many options so they had to deal with it, is that, look, relationships are a lot of work. And I think that in our modern culture, like, people expect things to just happen for them. They want easy sort of positivity that just comes to them, right?
Well, you expect, like, love is supposed to be super easy.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a fairy tale, and like, you just, man and woman meet, and we really like one another, and it just is happily ever after, and you never get annoyed with the person that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
That's not actually the way it is.
No.
They expect that Hollywood romance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a certain amount of maturity, and I mean, I can say this because, look, I have 2 kids, and I got a 3-year-old and I got a newborn too. I'm telling you, me and my wife all of our time together is spent taking care of those kids. There's not really a lot of time for me and her. We try to make time and stuff, but this is just the reality of what it means to be a parent. And a lot of people don't realize that. Not to say that you're getting in a relationship and that's necessarily going to happen. You may have kids later on or whatever, but understanding those aspects to it, that there's more going on there than just you guys feeling good. There's a lot of work that goes into a relationship, and you got to understand that going forward, that it's not about necessarily, oh, I'm seeing this person because she makes me feel good, it's going to make my life better. That is certainly a thing that should be present, but you have to understand that it's mutual. You got to make her life better too, and that means sacrifice on your end. So, and a lot of people don't understand that aspect of it, that it takes that, you got to feel bad sometimes, you got to feel uncomfortable sometimes so that your partner can feel good. And that's the give and take of it. And I think most people don't realize that nowadays. They all want it for themselves. And as soon as it goes away from that, they're like, fuck it, I'm out.
Some people say, I didn't realize a relationship would be that much work. Or like, why should a relationship be a lot of work? And I think a good analogy is, imagine you had a really nice apartment. Why wouldn't you expect that to be a lot of work? You gotta keep it clean. Like everything that is good and worth something in life requires work. And it should not be pointless work. It should not be demotivating work. It should not be, it should not be a net drain on your life by any means. But all that stuff does require work. And this is the thing what you were talking about, in your relationship. It is, it's a challenge, but it's still better. It's still better than being single.
Yeah.
It's still better than what you would be doing otherwise.
I mean, look,
if you were achieving that same level of stuff. It's still better to do it with somebody else.
I'm relatively young. I'm turning 34 this year. I'm from New Brunswick in Canada, which is like the West Virginia of Canada. So we all get married young and stuff. And I'm pretty old considering for New Brunswick standards of how old I should be with these amount of kids. But the thing is that there's a certain time in your life and you decide, you know what, I'm ready for the next part, and this is the next part. I don't expect to be married and having kids and still living the life I lived when I was in my 20s. And I think this is another problem guys have, is like they want to be in a relationship, but they still want to have all the benefits of being single, I want to be able to spend time with my friends whenever I want, which is fine if you're just in a relationship. Once you get into a place where you're living together and you got responsibilities together, you can still hang out with your friends, but whenever you want, that might take some give and take there. So there is a certain amount of compromise that needs to be put in place when you're getting there. But you got to understand that this is there's an evolution to your life, and if you think that you can live your whole life just for yourself, maybe you shouldn't be in a relationship. Is sort of the idea. So
Dan,
yeah,
what does because you're going to be doing like a world tour, aren't you?
Yeah.
What does your girlfriend think about that?
Oh, she's coming with me, so.
Hey, congratulations. Congratulations.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. So what does my partner, what does my girlfriend think about that? Or?
I guess the question should change to be now, what does she think about being able to travel around the world with you?
I mean, yeah, we're both stoked. Like, it's kind of turned into this little, it's funny how much closer we are just from like planning this trip. And like, I'm leaving in like a month, and don't get me wrong, going back to your relationship and your working out, the fact that relationships are work, like this trip together is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had the trip planned before I met her, right? So I had this whole idea. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to save up this money. I'm going to like go around the world. And then I met her and I was like, oh crap, I'm like falling for this girl. Then the work I was going to be doing abroad, because we're both going to work and travel, or freelance and travel, the work we were doing, or what I was doing, was falling through. So I put it on hold for a while, and then it basically was like, look, I still want to do this. Do you want to do this? And she's like, yeah. We basically talked through it, and we established some boundaries. I'm like, look, I'm not going to be paying for this entire trip for you and me. Like, we're both going to have to freelance. We're both going to have to work. It's gonna, and I'm pretty upfront with like, look, we're going to be traveling around the world. We're going to be living in countries that don't always have the easiest of internet access, countries that don't speak English. Like, are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah, so that's
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you can probably hear it in my voice. Like, I'm really happy about that, but also like, I would not do that with 95% of the girls I've dated or been with, that's a pretty special.
You made her go through the camping test,
Yeah.
so you know that she can handle it.
Yeah.
You're optimistic.
Yeah, very optimistic. But that's the thing. Like, hey, this may completely blow up in my face or our face. Like it may be the worst decision we've ever made. But you kind of have to. You got two choices, right? So you can either A, stay in your safe little bubble.
Yeah.
With your relationship where you're not living together, or you can take a risk.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely take the risk and like pressure test it. Because if you pressure test it, if it falls apart, you saved yourself some time.
Yeah.
And if it survives the pressure test, then you know that you can do it.
Yeah.
And that is.
There's a Bill Murray quote of how do you know if you want to spend the rest of your life with someone? It's travel around the world, and if you guys are still together at the end of it, it's probably a good idea.
That's awesome.
I like that.
And I think we should end this conversation with those amazing words of wisdom from Bill Murray. Because Bill Murray is
the patron saint of Bill Murray.
He's one of my role models.
Yeah, man.
No, Dan.
Definitely.
Thanks so much for joining us. We got Dan Wildcard here. He's a Love Systems instructor. Dan, do you have any boot camps coming up?
Are you going to teach while you're on your world tour?
Yeah.
That's the plan right now. Nothing's scheduled, but look for some stuff in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia, maybe some Asian countries around June, July-ish. We're going to get those up. And then later in the year, look for some European countries, London, Dublin, maybe some Paris, some Spanish country, or somewhere in Spain. So
awesome,
man. They come up soon.
Awesome. Dan Wildcard, he's been voted the #1 instructor at Love Systems more than once, as I recall.
Yes.
And an all-around really incredible guy, located in California, going to be traveling all around the world. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
All
Good
right.
luck on your trip.
Thanks, man. Bye.
All right, guys. So this